been taking the subway home for years. Late at night, the kind of hours that make the city feel hollow, like it belongs to someone else entirely. My office ran late, my apartment was far, and a night bus never seemed convenient. So I took the train. Always the last one, always the same route, always the same empty platform at the end of the line. Most nights were uneventful. I'd sink into a corner seat, headphones in, phone in hand, pretending to read something important, tuning out the occasional drunk or the sleep-deprived commuter who muttered to themselves. It was routine, predictable, safe, or so I thought. It was a Tuesday, and the office had run me late. My co-workers had already left, and the streetlights flickered on empty sidewalks as I approached the subway station. My keycard scanned, the turnstiles clicked, and I descended into the familiar tunnel, the smell of damp concrete and electricity filling my nose. When I arrived at the platform, the train was already there. I stepped into the car and froze. It was empty. Not the usual scattered few late-night passengers. No people standing around groaning into their phones. Completely empty. Not a soul in sight, just me, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, and the faint echo of the train wheels on the tracks. I took a deep breath and moved down the aisle. My footsteps echoed. The hum of the train suddenly felt louder. My heartbeat quickened, and I found myself scanning the dark corners, expecting to see a shadow flicker. I shook my head. I was being paranoid. Empty trains weren't unusual at this hour. As the train lurched forward, I settled into a seat near the middle. My backpack rested on my lap, headphones in, music on, trying to calm myself. And that's when I noticed it, a shadow at the far end of the car. I froze. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, maybe a reflection, maybe the distorted shape of a pole. But it moved, slow, purposeful, step by step toward me. I held my breath. My fingers gripped the straps of my bag. The lights flickered, and I thought I caught a glimpse of a face, pale, expressionless, unblinking. I tried to stand. I tried to leave, but the doors were closing at the next stop, and I was trapped. The figure stopped a few rows away from me. No one else was in the car. Not a sound except the low rumble of the train. Then it spoke. "I've been watching you." The voice was soft, calm, too calm. My stomach dropped. "Who? What do you want?" I whispered. It didn't answer immediately, just tilted its head, studying me, the way a predator might study its prey. The lights flickered again, and the reflection of its eyes glinting in the window made me jump. "I could ride with you every night," it said, "and you wouldn't know. But tonight the train is empty." I tried to gather my courage. I don't know you. Go away." It smiled, or at least it looked like a smile, twisted, slow, unsettling. The train slowed for the next station. Normally someone would get on, someone would break the tension, but no one came. The doors opened with a hiss, and then closed again. The car remained empty, save for us. I tried my phone. No signal. Not unusual underground. But suddenly I felt the walls close in. I felt exposed. It moved closer, step by step, silent, deliberate. My heart was pounding so loud I thought it would wake the city itself. "You always come home this late," it said, voice soft, almost conversational. "I like it. Quiet, no witnesses, just you, just me." I felt sick. I didn't know whether to scream, cry, or run. But the train was moving. There was nowhere to go. And then I realized something worse. Its eyes. They weren't human. Not exactly. They reflected the dim lights in a way that made them look hollow, dark, bottomless, like black mirrors. I could feel its gaze on every part of me, as though it had already memorized the shape of my face, the way I breathed, the rhythm of my movements. I felt hunted, I felt like prey. I stumbled back against a seat, clutching my bag like a shield. "You're safe. For now," it whispered, leaning closer. "But I always know. I always follow." The train slowed again, approaching my station. My relief surged, but then I noticed the shadow wasn't moving toward the doors. It was moving toward me, always one step ahead, no matter where I tried to sit. The station came into view, lights flickering, walls grimy, the smell of damp concrete. I prepared to leap off the train at the last second, desperate to escape, but the figure blocked the path, standing there silently, waiting. The doors hissed open, inviting me into the empty platform, but it stayed in the car, watching me, waiting. I ran. I didn't look back. My shoes clanged on the platform, echoing like gunshots in the empty station. I didn't take the subway for a week. Every night I felt its gaze on me, in reflections, in shop windows, in shadows crossing the street. I tried cabs, buses, walking, but the fear didn't leave. Then, after a week, I had no choice. Work ran late again. I took the last train, and there it was, across the aisle, shadowed, unblinking, watching. I froze. It didn't move, didn't speak, but I knew. I knew it would ride with me every night, always silent, always there, always patient, waiting for the train to empty, waiting for the night when I was alone, waiting for the moment I wasn't careful enough. And I realized there would never be a night when I felt safe on the subway again. I never saw its face clearly, never knew its name, but every late night, every lonely commute, I feel it, across the aisle, just beyond the glow of the fluorescent lights. Sometimes, in my dreams, I'm on the train again, empty car, shadows creeping along the walls, and I can hear its whisper, "You belong to the night now." And I wake, heart pounding, hoping it's only a dream, until I remember it waits, always waits. And I know, somewhere beneath the city, on the tracks I travel every night, it's there, watching. I was 24 when it all started. Married young, 2 little kids at home, and pulling long hours as a shift leader at Taco Bell. My life was loud but predictable. Diapers and cartoons at home, beeping fryers and late-night drunks at work. I thought I had a rhythm, a balance, something resembling control. But then he showed up. At first he was nothing more than a face in the crowd. A guy in his mid to late 20s, maybe 30, always coming in alone. He had this energy about him, too much eye contact, a smile that felt like it was stretching just a little too far. You know how most customers order, grab their food and go? Not him. He lingered, always polite, overly polite, always friendly, too friendly. At first I didn't think much of it. I'd worked fast food long enough to know some people just didn't have boundaries, but it became impossible to ignore. He was there every single shift I worked. It didn't matter if I opened, if I closed, or if I pulled some random mid-shift. He was there, always alone, always smiling, always waiting for me to ring him up, even if the other registers were open. The realization hit me slowly, like cold water dripping down the back of my neck. He wasn't just a regular customer. He was watching me. I told my husband about it, of course. He brushed it off at first. "Creeps exist," he said, "but he probably just has a crush. You're safe. He doesn't know where we live." That reassurance got me through a few more weeks. But deep down, I felt something was wrong. Something about him was hollow. One night, near closing, I was counting registers when I heard the dining room door creak open. We had locked it 30 minutes earlier. My stomach dropped. I looked up. He was inside. He didn't walk to the counter. He just stood in the middle of the empty dining room, head cocked slightly, smiling at me. His eyes didn't blink. I froze. "Sir, we're closed." My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. He didn't move. The air felt thick, like I had to push the words through syrup. Finally, after what felt like forever, he muttered, "I just wanted to see you." Then he turned and left, the door clicking shut behind him. I didn't sleep that night. The breaking point came when I walked in one afternoon and saw him behind the counter. One of the assistant managers was training him, handing him a headset, showing him how to work the register. My body went cold. I didn't even clock in. I went straight to the office, heart pounding, and demanded to see the store manager. I spilled everything, how he'd been in every one of my shifts, how he watched me, how he had stood in the dining room after closing. Her face went pale. She hadn't known it was him. She'd heard some guy kept coming in, but never connected the dots. She was horrified. Right there, in front of me. She picked up the phone and called the nearest store. She arranged to have him transferred immediately. "He'll work here today," she said, "but tomorrow he starts at the other store, and I promise you, he won't work with you again." She told me to take the night off. I went home, but I couldn't relax. My skin itched with dread, like I was waiting for something to happen. The next day I came back to work. My manager pulled me aside. "He didn't take it well," she whispered. When I told him he had to transfer, he quit. Relief washed over me. Relief, but also unease. People like him don't just disappear. And I was right. He came back. Not as an employee, not even as a regular customer, but he came back. A few times I'd catch sight of him in the dining room, sitting quietly, watching me. Other times, I'd look up from the register and see him outside the glass, standing at the edge of the parking lot, half hidden in the shadows. Once, I swore I saw him following me on my walk home, his figure just visible a block behind me. I told my husband. After that, he started sitting in the dining room during my shifts, glaring at the man whenever he appeared. It seemed to work. Eventually, the visits stopped. I told myself it was over, but deep down, I knew better. Months passed. I let myself relax. I convinced myself I was paranoid, that he'd gotten bored and moved on. Then one night, after a brutal closing shift, I walked home alone. My husband had stayed with the kids. The streets were empty, the air damp with mist. Halfway home, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, steady. I didn't turn around at first. My pulse quickened. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, just another night walker, just coincidence. Then I heard it, soft, almost like a whisper, carried on the fog. "I just wanted to see you." I spun around. No one was there. But the footsteps, they didn't stop. That's when the dreams began. I'd wake in the middle of the night to the sound of the front door creaking open, only to find the house silent and locked tight. I'd dream of the Taco Bell dining room, empty and dark, with him standing in the middle, smiling. His eyes black voids. Sometimes, I'd dream my kids were crying in the night, and when I went to their room, I'd find him standing over their cribs, whispering lullabies in a language I didn't understand. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, sometimes screaming, sometimes too paralyzed to even move. My husband said I was just traumatized, that my brain was making monsters out of shadows. But then the knocks started. The knocks, always at night, always between 2 and 3 a.m. 3 knocks, slow, hollow. We had a peephole. Every time I looked, no one was there. But once, just once, I looked and saw him. His face was inches from the glass, staring directly at me, smiling. When I screamed for my husband and he came running, the porch was empty. The last time I saw him was at work. I had been promoted to assistant manager by then, and I was closing one night with a new crew. Around 1 a.m., after the dining room was locked, I went to check the lobby, and there he was, standing in the middle of the dining room. The doors were locked, no alarms had gone off. He was just there. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. He tilted his head, smile widening. "You left me," he whispered, "but I never left you." I blinked, and he was gone. The dining room was empty. Now, it's been years since then. I don't work at Taco Bell anymore. My kids are older. My husband says I need therapy, that it was just stress, paranoia, hallucinations, but I know the truth. He's still out there. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I catch sight of him in reflections, standing just behind me in the glass of a window, in the blank screen of a turned-off TV. Sometimes, when I tuck my kids into bed, I hear humming, low, tuneless, coming from the dark corners of their room. And sometimes, on the nights when sleep won't come and the house feels too quiet, I hear it again. 3 knocks, slow, hollow, patient. He's still waiting for me. And one day, I think he's going to stop waiting. When I was 23, I rented a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. It was an old 3-story building, half empty, with most of the tenants either elderly couples or students like me. I liked it because it was cheap and quiet, the kind of quiet that helps you study, the kind of silence that feels safe. But that silence, that emptiness, would soon become something else entirely, something I still can't think about without a chill crawling up my spine. The first time I saw him was on a winter night. It was close to 2 a.m., and I had just returned from the library. The cold had fogged up the windows, so I pulled the thin curtain aside to look outside. That's when I noticed a shadow standing across the street. At first, I thought it was just a homeless man, or maybe a drunk wandering home. But the longer he stood there, the more I realized he wasn't just loitering. He was facing my building, facing my window, watching. He didn't move, not even when I shifted in the room. It felt like his eyes followed me. My skin prickled. I switched off the light and stepped back into the shadows. The next day I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe just a trick of the night. But a few nights later, there he was again. The same figure, in the same place. This time I caught details. A tall man, wearing a dark coat and a hat pulled low. He never came closer, never spoke. He just watched. Weeks passed. His presence became part of my nights. Sometimes he disappeared, and I almost let myself believe it was over. But then he would return, standing there like a statue. And then came the night I found footprints in the snow, leading from the street straight to beneath my balcony. They stopped right at the wall. That was when I called the police. An officer came, walked around, found nothing. He told me it was probably a passerby, that I was overthinking, but I knew what I had seen. After that, fear began to seep into everything. I couldn't concentrate in class. Friends said I looked pale, exhausted. They were right. I locked everything obsessively, triple-checked the door, sealed every window, kept a kitchen knife by the bed. One night I woke to a sound, a faint, deliberate scratching at the glass. My heart froze. I couldn't bring myself to touch the curtain. I just listened. The scratching continued, slow, deliberate, like a fingernail or the tip of a knife dragged across the window. Hands trembling, I picked up my phone and dialed the police. Before the call connected, the sound stopped. I sat frozen until morning, wide-eyed, unable to sleep. When the sun finally rose, I forced myself to look, and there they were. Shallow, jagged lines carved into the glass. Not an accident, not imagination. Someone had been there, marking my window. A few nights later, I woke to a sound. At first it was so faint I thought it was in my head, like the hum of a dream that hadn't let go yet. Then I realized it was real. It was coming from the wall beside my bed. I pressed my ear closer, trying to understand. At first just a murmur, a jumble of syllables that made no sense. Then, as if whoever or whatever it was had leaned closer to the other side, I heard it clearly. A low whisper, right against the plaster. "Are you awake?" Every muscle in my body locked. It was as if the voice had crawled straight under my skin. I jerked back, heart slamming in my chest. For the rest of the night, I didn't move. I couldn't. I just sat upright in bed staring at that wall, ears straining for the whisper to come again. It never did. Only silence. A silence that stretched on so long it became unbearable. When morning finally came, I stumbled out of the apartment and straight to the superintendent. My voice shook as I asked about the neighboring unit. He frowned at me, confused, and shook his head. "That apartment's been empty for months," he said. "The last night I ever spent in that apartment was a nightmare I'll never forget. I woke to the sound of shattering glass from the kitchen. Knife in hand, I crept down the hall. When I flicked on the light, the cabinets were wide open. Plates shattered across the floor, but no one was there. From behind me, I heard footsteps. I spun. The hallway was empty, yet a whisper brushed against my ear, so close I could feel the breath. "I'm here." I screamed and ran into my bedroom, locking the door. I crawled under the bed like a terrified child. The footsteps followed. They stopped right outside. Silence. Then, breathing, heavy, deliberate. The doorknob turned, slowly. Then came the knocking. Soft at first, then harder, louder, until the whole frame shuddered. I called 911, whispering into the phone. "Someone's in my house." The operator said officers were on their way. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the knocking stopped. Silence pressed against my ears, so deep I thought I'd gone deaf. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, they found nothing. No forced entry, no footprints, no trace. As if I had imagined everything. But the scratches on the window remained. The gouges near the lock were still there. And I'll never forget the sound of that whisper. The next day, I packed a bag and left. My parents collected the rest later. I refused to step foot in that building again. That was 3 years ago. I live in another city now, a different apartment, different life, but sometimes, late at night, when the streets are quiet and the world is asleep, I hear it again. "Are you awake?"